Welcome to another Bible Story Children's Time. Today is Monday, June 29th, and we welcome you back. Today, we're going to hear a little more about the story of Joseph. Joseph the dreamer. Joseph, the guy with the colored coat. Joseph, the guy whose brothers kidnapped him and sold him into slavery in Egypt. Any one of those would work. And as we ended the story last week, I believe, Joseph was in charge of the efforts in Egypt to go through the 7 years of famine that Pharaoh had dreamt about and that Joseph had predicted. And Joseph's brothers, the very same brothers who had kidnapped him and thrown him into a cistern and then sold him into slavery, which was a step up for them because they'd originally intended to kill him. Those very same brothers came to Egypt in search of food. And they brought silver to pay for the food with, and Joseph met with them, recognized them for who they were, although they didn't recognize him. And he sold them their grain, and then he had his minions secretly stuff the silver back into their bags. Oh, and he demanded that a father or one of the brothers be left behind. So, the brothers went back to Canaan, and the story picks up a little later. It says in Genesis chapter 43, if you're following along, "Now the famine was still severe in the land, so when they had eaten all of the grain that they had brought from Egypt, their father was Jacob, remember? Jacob said to them, 'Go back and buy us a little more food.' And Judah, the eldest son, Judah said to his father, 'Dad, come on, remember? We told you what Joseph said. We told you that Joseph doesn't want to see us if we don't bring our youngest brother, Benjamin, back. We told you that, right? But you won't send him. You flat out refused to send him along with us. And Joseph said, you will not see my face again unless your brother is with you. So we can't go buy any more food from Egypt.' That's a non-starter. So Jacob thought about this, and then he said, 'Okay, tell me this, though. Why did you bring this trouble on by telling this Egyptian dude that you had a younger brother?' And Jacob's son said, 'Well, the man asked us. He questioned us very closely, and he seemed to know stuff about us. He asked us, is your father still living? And then he asked us, do you have another brother?' We answered his questions because not to answer would have been rude at least and maybe dangerous. We don't know this guy. And once we answered, that's when he demanded that we bring the other brother back with us." Discussion like this went on for some time. Jacob clinging tightly to his youngest son, who he thought was his youngest son at least. Clinging to him because he was still alive. And he remembered the trauma of losing Joseph. And he wasn't about to let Benjamin go into harm's way. And finally, Judah, the eldest brother, said, you know what? Send the boy with me. Send him with us. And we will go to Egypt. And we will buy food so that you and us and our children don't die. Have you looked in the cupboard? It's pretty bare. I myself will personally guarantee his safety. You can hold me personally responsible for him. If I don't bring him back, then I will bear the blame in front of you. I will bear that blame for all my life. As it is, as long as we've been arguing about this, we could have gone down and come back twice. We've been arguing for too long. Finally, Father says, okay, you know what? If that's how it has to be, then that's how it has to be. But I want you to do this. We want to butter this guy up, this Egyptian dude. So I want you to take along some of our best stuff. Put together a nice little goodie bag. Take some balm that we're known for. Take some honey. Take some spices. Take some myrrh. Pistachio. Who doesn't like pistachio nuts? Take some pistachio nuts. And take some almonds. Let's do this upright. And when you go back, remember, you have to take twice as much silver because he gave you the silver back into your bags, and maybe that was a mistake, so you're going to want to return that, or at least offer to return it if he'll take it. And then you can take your brother, the youngest, and you go back and you present yourselves to this man, this Egyptian. And God help you, Judah. God grant you mercy before that man, because if he doesn't come back, if your brother, if Benjamin doesn't come back, I will be bereaved. I will blame you. So with all that in mind, Joseph's brothers gathered together all of the stuff that Dad had suggested. The nuts, the salve, the spices, all of these things. Gathered them together, put them in bags, grabbed twice the amount of silver that they'd originally had the first trip. And they grabbed their brother, Benjamin. And they hurried down to Egypt to present themselves to Joseph. Remember, they didn't know he was Joseph. He was known by some Egyptian name to them. And when Joseph looked and saw that Benjamin was with them, he said to the steward of his house, the guy that ran his house, he said, "Take these men to my house," because he was seeing him in the office. And he said, "Take these men to my house, slaughter an animal, and prepare a feast. They are to eat with me at noon." Now the man did as Joseph told him to do. The steward did. And his brothers were scared to death because Egyptians didn't eat with Hebrews. It was a big social no-no. So as they were being taken to the house, they were talking among themselves, and they were thinking, "Oh Lord, we're being brought here so that he can take all our stuff and turn us into slaves. Or maybe he'll just kill us and take all our stuff." Any way they played out the scenario, it wasn't good. So they went up, when they got there, they went up to Joseph's steward and they spoke to him. And they said, by the way, we forgot to mention this before, but by the way, when we came down here the first time to buy food, when we left and we stopped for the first night, at the Holiday Inn, we opened up our sacks and each of us found the exact amount of silver that we had paid for the grain. And, we brought it back home, but we've been realizing that maybe was probably a mistake. So we brought it back with us, and here it is. And we've also brought back additional silver so that we can buy more food. Okay? We don't know where the silver came from. We don't know what happened. So here it is. Here's more silver for grain. And we're all cool, right? And the steward said, yeah, that's fine. Don't worry. Your God, the God of your father, must have put that treasure in your sacks. And now you've given it back. And guess what? The brother you left here as a hostage, Simeon, you get him back. So the steward brought forth Simeon. He was reunited with the brothers, and then he took all of the brothers into Joseph's house. And there they had a chance to wash their feet, clean up a little from the road, provided food for the donkeys, grain for the donkeys. And then, while they were waiting for Joseph to come, the brothers got their little gift bag together, goodie bag. And then they waited. When Joseph came home, they presented him with these gifts that they had brought to the house, and they bowed down before him and they said, hey, good to see you again. How you doing? Nice to have Simeon back. And Joseph said, how's your father doing? This aged father we talked about on your last trip, is he still living? And the brothers immediately said, yeah, sure, he's alive and kicking. He's doing okay. He is alive and well. And then Joseph was looking over all the brothers, and he spotted Benjamin. Benjamin was his own mother's son, as well as Jacob's. So Joseph had a special bond with him. The other brothers were really like half-brothers. They were born to other mothers of Jacob. But Benjamin was special. But he didn't let on quite. He said to the brothers, oh, is this the youngest brother that you told me about? And he said, yeah, that's him. See, we brought him home just like we said. We brought him back just like we said we would. And then he said to Benjamin, God be gracious to you, my son. And the sight of his youngest brother being there made him think about the bond between them, made him think about what had happened to him personally, and he had to leave. He got all verklempt, and he went to his private room, and he cried for a little bit. And then he was able to stop, and he washed himself up, and he went back to them. And he said, all right, let's eat. And they ate. The men were seated all in one place. Joseph was seated separate from them, because even though he was eating sort of together, they still maintained a distance because that was the proper thing to do. And when the portions were served to the brothers from Joseph's table, Benjamin's portion was 5 times as much as anybody else's. But they didn't care. They just feasted and had a good time. While they were eating, Joseph called his steward to a little conference. And he told his steward, here's what I want you to do. Give the men, these visitors, fill the sacks with as much grain as they can carry. And then put each man's silver back in the sack. And then I want you to take this cup, this fine silver cup that I use. It's my personal cup. Put it in the sack belonging to the youngest one right there. And don't let anyone see you. And the steward did as Joseph said. Finally, after a long night of partying, dawn came and the men were sent on their way. Donkeys were packed up. They had all the grain and the silver and the cup, which they didn't know about. And they left. And after they had been gone a little while, they weren't too far from the city, Joseph called his steward over again. And he said, here's what I want you to do. Right after those men, detain them. And then ask them why they have repaid my good deeds with evil. And then I want you to look through their bags and find that cup, special cup, that you hid in the youngest brother's bag. And then bring them back here. And once again, the steward did just as he was told. He grabbed some guards, and he went after the brothers, and he found them, and he said just what Joseph told him to say. He said, guys, after everything Joseph did for you, he fed you, he ate with you, he gave you grain, how could you repay all of that by doing such a mean and rotten thing? And they looked at him, so they were totally flabbergasted, because of course they had no idea what he was talking about. And they said, we don't know what you're talking about. We did not steal anything. We didn't steal any silver. We didn't steal any gold. We paid for the grain, for heaven's sake. So I don't know what the problem is. And the steward said, you know. Somebody has my master's cup that he uses. He uses it to drink from, and he uses it for divination. He uses it to foretell the future. And when we find it, whoever has it, he's going to die. And the rest of you, the ones that don't die, are going to become our slaves. The brothers were feeling confident, knowing they had not stolen anything. So they kind of scared but confident. They each put their sacks down and they said, go ahead, check. It's like going through TSA at the airport. Bag by bag, each bag was searched. And they finally got to the youngest one, Benjamin. And they opened his bag up. there they found the cup. And the steward just reached into the bag and he held it up and he said, "This is what you stole. And you know what's going to happen next." And we'll have to find that out tomorrow. So, we will hear the conclusion of the story of Joseph the Dreamer tomorrow. In the meantime, have a great afternoon. Seems like it's a little rainy out there, but it'll be a great afternoon anyway. Stay healthy. We'll see you tomorrow.